I thought coming home early from my business trip would be a romantic surprise for my wife. Instead, I walked into my own house to find it packed with strangers at a party I wasn't invited to. But when I saw my wife getting cozy with some young stud by the fireplace, I realized this wasn't just a party. It was my marriage's funeral. Little did she know, I had a folder in my jacket that would change everything and destroy her perfect little world forever. My name is Wade Mitchell. I'm 47 years old, and I've been selling tractors and combines to farmers in rural Texas for the past 15 years. Built my dealership from nothing into the most trusted name in agricultural equipment from here to San Antonio. My wife Brenda and I have 2 kids, Felix, 16, and Haley, 14. Or at least I thought they were both mine until recently. I was supposed to be in Dallas until Friday, closing a deal with a corporate farm operation. Big sale, 6 John Deere tractors and 2 combines. The kind of deal that pays for Christmas, and then some. But the buyer's financing fell through Wednesday afternoon, so I decided to surprise Brenda by coming home early. Maybe we could have dinner together, just the 2 of us. Lord knows we hadn't done that in months. The drive from Dallas to our place outside Austin usually gives me time to unwind, but that Wednesday evening felt different. My gut was churning, and I couldn't shake this feeling that something was off. When I pulled into our circular driveway at 7:30, I knew I was right. Cars everywhere. Our driveway was packed, vehicles spilling onto the grass and down the street. Music thumped from inside our house, my house that I'd worked 16-hour days to pay for. Through the front windows, I could see people laughing, drinks in hand like some college party. I grabbed my overnight bag and walked to the front door. The music got louder as I approached. I could hear Brenda's laugh cutting through the noise, that high-pitched giggle she used when she was trying to impress someone. I opened the door without knocking. It's my house, after all. The scene that greeted me made my blood run cold. Our living room was packed with people I didn't recognize. 20-somethings mostly, drinking beer from our good glasses, feet up on our leather furniture. The coffee table was covered in empty bottles and pizza boxes. And there, in the center of it all, was my wife. Brenda stood by the fireplace in a black dress I'd never seen before, one that showed more skin than she'd revealed to me in years. She was leaning into some guy with perfectly styled hair and a smug smile, her hand resting on his chest like they were high school sweethearts. The room went quiet when they noticed me standing in the doorway, suitcase in hand. Brenda turned around, and for just a split second, I saw pure panic flash across her face. Then she recovered, putting on that fake smile she used with difficult customers. "Wade," she said, her voice unnaturally bright. "You're home early." I looked around the room at all these strangers in my house, then back at my wife and her boy toy. "I can see that," I replied, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. "What the hell is going on here, Brenda?" The silence stretched between us like a loaded gun. Brenda's fake smile wavered as she glanced nervously between me and her pretty boy. The kid couldn't have been older than 30, probably some personal trainer from that fancy gym she'd joined 6 months ago. "It's just a small get-together," Brenda said, her voice pitched higher than usual. "You know, some friends from the fitness center." I looked around the room again, counting heads. 23 people, all strangers, drinking my bourbon and eating food I'd paid for. "Friends," I said, stepping further into the room. "I don't recognize a single face here, Brenda. And I sure as hell don't know Romeo over there." The young man shifted uncomfortably, his hand sliding off Brenda's waist like he'd been burned. "Smart move." "Wade, please," Brenda said, moving toward me with her arms slightly extended, like she was approaching a wild animal. "Let's not make a scene. These people are my guests. In my house," I said, my voice dropping to that low tone that made difficult customers back down. Using my liquor, eating my food, and apparently entertaining my wife. Felix appeared at the top of the stairs, drawn by the tension. My 16-year-old son looked between his mother and me with the kind of expression kids get when they sense their world is about to change forever. "Dad," Felix called down. "What's going on?" Before I could answer, Brenda jumped in. "Nothing, honey. Your father just got home early from his trip. Go back to your room." But Felix didn't move. He was a smart kid, honor roll student, and he could read a situation better than most adults. His eyes found the young man still hovering near his mother, and I saw understanding dawn on his face. "Who's that guy, Mom?" Felix asked, his voice carrying the sharp, edge of accusation. The pretty boy took that as his cue to leave. "I should probably go," he mumbled, heading for the door. "Kyle, wait," Brenda called after him, and that single word, the desperation in her voice as she called another man's name, told me everything I needed to know. I stepped into Kyle's path, blocking his route to the door. He was maybe 6'2", athletic build, but I had 20 years of hard work and pure rage on my side. "Where are you going, Kyle?" I asked, his name tasting bitter on my tongue. "The party's just getting started." Kyle's eyes darted toward Brenda, looking for help that wasn't coming. "Look, man," Kyle said, holding up his hands. "I didn't know you were coming back tonight. Brenda said you wouldn't be home until Friday." "Brenda said a lot of things, apparently," I replied. "But here's what I'm saying. Get out of my house. Now." Kyle didn't need to be told twice. He pushed past me and bolted for the door like his tail was on fire. The other party guests were already grabbing their coats and heading for the exits, sensing the storm that was about to break. Within 5 minutes, the house was empty except for family. Brenda stood in the middle of our destroyed living room, her face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "Are you happy now?" she snapped. "You've humiliated me in front of my friends." I looked at my wife, really looked at her, and realized I was staring at a stranger. Brenda was still standing there, arms crossed, waiting for me to back down like I always did when she got that defiant look on her face. But this time was different. This time I had ammunition. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the manila envelope that had been burning a hole there for the past week. Dale Murphy, the private investigator I'd hired, had done his job well. Too well. "You want to know why I came home early, Brenda?" I said, holding up the envelope. "It wasn't because my deal fell through. It was because I got a very interesting package from a detective agency." Her face went white faster than paint drying in the Texas sun. "What are you talking about?" she asked, but her voice had lost its edge. I opened the envelope and pulled out the first photograph. It showed Brenda and Kyle leaving the Marriott downtown last Tuesday, his arm around her waist, her laughing at something he'd whispered in her ear. "I'm talking about this," I said, holding up the photo. "And this." I pulled out another one, the two of them kissing in the parking lot of that fancy steakhouse on the east side. Brenda's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "And this is my personal favorite," I continued, pulling out the receipt from the hotel room she'd booked under a fake name. "Mrs. Johnson, room 247. Ring any bells?" Felix was still standing at the top of the stairs, and I could see him straining to hear every word. Good. He was old enough to know what kind of woman his mother really was. "Wade, I can explain," Brenda started, but I held up my hand. "You know what, Brenda?" I showed a note that changed everything. This note. I pulled out the final piece of evidence, a text message Dale had managed to retrieve from her phone records. "Want me to read it out loud? Wade's in Dallas until Friday. Come over at 7. The kids will be at their friends' houses." Brenda grabbed for the papers, but I stepped back. "That's private," she hissed. "Private?" I laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. "You brought your boyfriend into our house, the house where our children sleep, and you want to talk about private?" She tried a different approach, stepping closer with tears in her eyes. The same tears that used to make me cave every time we fought. "Wait, please. It didn't mean anything. Kyle means nothing to me." "Then why did you risk everything for nothing?" I asked. "Why did you lie to me for months? Why did you turn our home into your personal love nest?" Felix started coming down the stairs, his young face hard with anger I'd never seen before. "Mom," he said, his voice breaking. "Is it true? Are you cheating on Dad?" Brenda spun around, her mask of innocence slipping completely. "Felix, go to your room. This is between your father and me." But Felix didn't move. "Answer me, Mom. Did you cheat?" The silence stretched until Brenda finally looked at the floor and nodded. Felix stared at his mother like she'd grown a second head. My son had always been close to Brenda, always defended her when I complained about her spending or her attitude. But watching him realize that his hero had feet of clay was like watching a building collapse in slow motion. "How could you do this to Dad?" Felix asked, his voice raw with betrayal. "How could you do this to us?" Brenda reached for him, but Felix stepped back like her touch might burn him. "Honey, you don't understand. Your father and I, we've been having problems for a long time. So you thought sleeping around was the solution?" Felix shot back. At 16, he had more integrity than his mother had shown in months. I felt a surge of pride in my son, even as my heart was breaking for what this was doing to him. Felix, go check on your sister, I said quietly. Make sure she's okay. He nodded and headed upstairs, but not before giving his mother one last disgusted look. When we were alone again, Brenda tried to regain control of the situation. Wade, I know this looks bad, but we can work through this. We can go to counseling, start over. I gathered up the photos and documents, sliding them back into the envelope. You want to work through this? I asked. Fine. Let's start with the truth. How long has this been going on? Brenda bit her lip, calculating how much she could get away with lying about. A few weeks, she said finally. I pulled out my phone and showed her the timestamp on one of the photos Dale had provided. Try again. This picture is from 3 months ago. Her shoulders sagged in defeat. 3 months, she admitted. Maybe 4. And how many others have there been? Others, she said, trying to look shocked. Wade, there's only Kyle. I pulled out another set of photos. Brenda having lunch with a different man, holding hands across the table at a restaurant I'd never taken her to. Who's this guy? I asked. She stared at the photo like it was a snake about to strike. That's nobody. Just a friend. A friend you hold hands with. A friend you kiss in parking lots. I showed her another photo of the same man walking her to a hotel room. Brenda collapsed onto the couch, her head in her hands. How long have you been having me followed? She asked. Long enough, I said. Long enough to know that our entire marriage has been a lie. Long enough to know that every time you said you were working late or going out with the girls, you were really off screwing around behind my back. She looked up at me with tears streaming down her face, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no urge to comfort her. Just cold, hard resolve. What do you want, Wade? Do you want me to beg? Do you want me to promise it'll never happen again? I looked at the woman I'd loved for 18 years, the mother of my children, and realized I was looking at a stranger. I want you gone, I said simply. Pack your things and get out of my house. Brenda didn't move. She sat on the couch, staring at me like I'd just spoken in a foreign language. You can't be serious, Wade, she said. This is my home too. I've put 18 years of my life into this marriage. And I've put 18 years of honest work into building something for this family, I replied. While you were out playing house with every smooth-talking guy who gave you attention. Felix came back downstairs, and I could see he'd been crying. My son had always been tough, never one to show weakness, but finding out his mother was a cheater had broken something inside him. Dad, Felix said, his voice steady despite the pain in his eyes. I want you to know that Haley and I support whatever you decide to do. Brenda stood up quickly. Felix, you don't understand what you're saying. I'm your mother. A mother doesn't do what you did, Felix said, looking at her with the kind of disappointment that cuts deeper than anger. A mother doesn't bring strange men into her children's home. A mother doesn't lie to her family every single day. I'd never been prouder of my son than I was in that moment. Where's your sister? I asked. She's in her room, doing homework. She doesn't know yet, Felix said. I thought maybe we should tell her together. Brenda moved toward the stairs. I should be the one to tell my daughter what's happening. No, I said firmly, blocking her path. You've done enough damage. Felix and I will handle it. You can't turn my children against me, Brenda said, her voice rising. I'm not turning anyone against anyone, I replied. I'm just not covering for your lies anymore. Felix looked between us and made his choice. He walked over and stood beside me, a united front against the woman who betrayed us all. Mom, Felix said quietly, I think you should pack some things and stay somewhere else tonight. Maybe with one of your boyfriends. The cruelty in his words wasn't lost on any of us, but Brenda had earned every bit of it. Felix, please, she begged. Please what, Mom? Please pretend this never happened. Please keep lying for you. Felix shook his head. I'm done pretending. Brenda looked at me desperately. Wade, you gonna let our son talk to me like this? Our son is talking to you exactly like a cheating wife deserves to be talked to, I said, with honesty. You should try it sometime. She stormed toward the stairs, but I called after her. Brenda. She turned around, hope flickering in her eyes. Take only what's yours, I said. Everything else stays here. The hope died, replaced by pure venom. This isn't over, Wade, she hissed. You think you could just throw me away like garbage? I know things about you too. Like what? I asked, genuinely curious. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. We both knew she had nothing. I'd been faithful, honest, and devoted to my family for 18 years. That's what I thought, I said. Now go pack. After Brenda went upstairs, Felix and I sat down in the living room that still smelled like her betrayal party. The silence between us wasn't uncomfortable. It was the silence of two men figuring out how to rebuild their world. Dad, Felix said finally, I want you to know I never liked Kyle. Or any of those other guys she's been bringing around when you're out of town. My blood turned to ice water. Other guys? She's been bringing men here before. Felix nodded, his jaw tight with anger. Not just Kyle. There was this older guy with a Mercedes who came by a few times last month. And some gym trainer before that. I thought maybe they were his friends, but the way she acted around them. He shrugged. I knew something wasn't right. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. She made me promise not to. Said you wouldn't understand. That you were too jealous and controlling. Felix looked at me with eyes older than his 16 years. I believed her at first. I thought maybe you were the problem. But watching how she acted tonight, seeing those pictures, I know better now. I put my hand on my son's shoulder. I'm sorry you had to see all this. I'm sorry she put you in that position. I'm not, Felix said firmly. I'm glad I know the truth. And Dad, I'm proud of how you handled it. You didn't yell or hit anyone. You just showed her the facts and let her hang herself with her own lies. Before I could respond, we heard Haley's door open upstairs. My 14-year-old daughter appeared at the top of the stairs in her pajamas, looking confused and worried. Felix? Dad? What's all the noise about? And why is Mom throwing things around in your bedroom? Felix and I exchanged glances. Time to face the hardest part of this whole mess. Come down here, sweetheart, I said. We need to talk. Haley came down slowly, her teenage intuition already telling her that whatever was happening wasn't good. Is everything okay? She asked. Sit down, Haley, I said gently. There's something you need to know about your mother. For the next 10 minutes, I explained the situation as carefully as I could. I showed her some of the less explicit photos, told her about the lies and the affairs. Felix held her hand while she cried. So Mom's been cheating on you? Haley asked through her tears. Yes, I said simply. For how long? Months. Maybe longer. Haley was quiet for a long time, processing what she'd learned. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady despite the tears. What happens now? She asked. Now we figure out how to move forward as a family, I said. The three of us. What about Mom? I looked up toward the bedroom, where we could still hear Brenda slamming drawers and cursing under her breath. Your mother made her choice, I said. Now she has to live with the consequences. Haley nodded and wiped her eyes. Dad, I want you to know that Felix and I love you, and we're going to be okay. Looking at my two kids, seeing their strength and maturity in the face of their mother's betrayal, I knew she was right. We were going to be more than okay. 3 days later, I was standing in Winston Hayes' law office, going over the divorce papers with the kind of precision I used when closing major equipment deals. Winston was exactly what I needed, a no-nonsense attorney who specialized in high-asset divorces. Wade, Winston said, spreading documents across his mahogany desk. Based on the evidence you've provided, we can push for everything. The house, the dealership, primary custody, and minimal alimony. What about the ranch property? I asked. 6 months ago, Brenda and I had bought a 40-acre spread outside town as an investment. At the time, she'd insisted we put it in both our names. That's where things get interesting, Winston replied. I did some digging into the financing. Turns out your wife took out a second mortgage on that property without your knowledge. Used the money to fund her affairs, hotel rooms, gifts for her boyfriends, even a weekend trip to Dallas with Kyle. My jaw clenched. Not only had she cheated, but she'd stolen from our family to pay for it. How much? I asked. $87,000, Winston said. She forged your signature on the loan documents. That was it. The final straw. Brenda hadn't just betrayed me emotionally. She'd committed fraud. Can we press charges? I asked. Absolutely. Forgery, fraud, theft, take your pick. With the evidence we have, the district attorney would love this case. I thought about Felix and Haley, about what it would mean for them to see their mother arrested. But then I thought about all the lies, all the nights I'd worked late to provide for a family while she was spending our money on other men. Do it, I said. Winston smiled grimly. There's more. I had my investigator looking to Kyle Brennan's background. Turns out he's married. Has been for 3 years. His wife had no idea about the affair. I leaned back in my chair, processing this information. Does Brendan know he's married? Based on the text messages we recovered, yes. She knew from the beginning. Didn't care. That evening, I sat down with Felix and Haley to explain what was happening next. They deserved to know the truth about the legal proceedings. Dad, Felix said after I'd explained about the forged loan documents. Mom stole from us? She did, I said simply. Haley, who'd been quiet through most of the conversation, finally spoke up. Are you going to have her arrested? I'm considering it, I said honestly. What she did wasn't just wrong, it was illegal. Good, Felix said with conviction. She needs to face consequences for what she's done to this family. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. When I opened it, I saw a message that made my blood boil. Wade, this is Kyle. We need to talk. Brenda told me you're trying to ruin both our lives. This doesn't have to get ugly. I showed the message to Felix, who read it and shook his head in disgust. What are you going to do, Dad? He asked. I deleted the message without responding. Nothing, I said. Kyle Brennan is about to have bigger problems than worrying about me. The next morning, I called Kyle's wife. I got her number from Dale Murphy, my private investigator, along with her address and workplace. Sarah Brennan worked as a nurse at Austin General Hospital and, according to Dale's research, had no idea her husband was a serial cheater. Mrs. Brennan, I said when she answered, my name is Wade Mitchell. I think we need to talk about your husband Kyle and my wife Brenda. There was a long pause. I don't know what you're talking about, she said, but her voice was shaky. Ma'am, I have photographs of your husband and my wife together. Hotel receipts, text messages, the whole thing. I think you deserve to know what's been happening. Another pause, longer this time. Can you meet me somewhere? She asked finally. An hour later, I sat across from Sarah Brennan at a coffee shop downtown. She was a pretty woman in her late 20s, with kind eyes that were currently filled with tears as she looked through the evidence I'd brought. How long? She asked quietly. At least 4 months, I said. Maybe longer. Sarah closed the folder and looked at me. Kyle told me he was working extra shifts at the gym. Said he was trying to save money for us to buy a house. I'm sorry, I said, meaning it. I know how much this hurts. What are you going to do? She asked. I'm divorcing Brenda and pressing charges for fraud, I said. She stole almost $90,000 from our family to pay for these affairs. Sarah's eyes widened. $90,000. She forged my signature on loan documents. Used the money for hotel rooms, gifts, trips with Kyle, and other men. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, then looked up at me with new resolve in her eyes. I want copies of everything, she said. Every photo, every receipt, every text message. Kyle thinks he can lie to me and get away with it. He's about to learn how wrong he is. 2 hours later, I was back home when my phone rang. It was Kyle, and he sounded panicked. What did you tell my wife? He demanded. I told her the truth, I said calmly. Something you should have done months ago. You had no right to involve Sarah in this, Kyle said, his voice rising. You involved Sarah the moment you decided to cheat on her with my wife, I replied. Don't blame me for your choices, kid. This isn't over, Kyle threatened. You're right, I said. It's not. Because tomorrow, Sarah's filing for divorce, and she's asking for everything. Your house, your car, your gym membership fees, all of it. Turns out she's been the primary breadwinner in your marriage. Who knew? I could hear Kyle breathing heavily on the other end of the line. And Kyle, I added, next time you want to threaten someone, make sure you're not living in a glass house. After I hung up, Felix appeared in the doorway of my office. Was that Kyle? He asked. It was, I said. How'd he sound? I smiled for the first time in days. Scared. Felix grinned. Good. He should be. That evening, Brenda called. She'd been staying at her sister's house since I'd kicked her out, and from the sound of her voice, the reality of her situation was finally sinking in. Wade, she said, we need to talk. This has gone too far. Has it? I asked. Because from where I'm sitting, we're just getting started. 6 months later, I stood in the courthouse hallway waiting for the final divorce hearing. Felix, now 17 and taller than me, stood beside me in his best suit. Haley, 14 and more mature than girls twice her age, held a folder containing her victim impact statement. Winston Hayes approached with a satisfied smile. Wait, I've got good news. Brenda's attorney just offered a complete settlement. She's pleading guilty to all fraud charges, waiving any claim to marital assets, and agreeing to supervised visitation only. What changed her mind? I asked. Kyle Brennan testified against her yesterday, Winston said. Turns out when his wife divorced him and took everything, he decided to cooperate with prosecutors. He provided text messages showing Brenda planned the whole fraud scheme. Through the courthouse window, I could see Brenda sitting on a bench outside, looking 20 years older than she had a year ago. Her sister sat beside her, probably the only person left willing to support her. Dad, Felix said, there's something I want you to know before we go in there. What's that, son? Haley and I talked, and we've decided we don't want any relationship with Mom, he said. Not supervised visits, not phone calls, nothing. What she did to our family is unforgivable. Haley nodded in agreement. She chose other men over her children. That's not something a real mother does. I felt a mix of pride and sadness. Proud of their strength and moral clarity. Sad that they'd had to grow up so fast. Are you sure? I asked. She's still your mother. No, Felix said firmly. A mother protects her family. She destroys it for selfish reasons. You're our family now, Dad. You and Haley and me. The hearing lasted 20 minutes. Brenda sat silently as the judge read the terms of our divorce. She would receive no alimony, no property, and no unsupervised contact with the children. She would also serve 18 months in minimum security prison for fraud. When it was over, Brenda approached us in the hallway. Wade, she said quietly, I know I don't deserve it, but could I talk to Felix and Haley for just a minute? I looked at my children, letting them decide. We have nothing to say to you, Felix said coldly. Please, Brenda begged. I'm your mother. I love you. You love Kyle more, Haley said simply. And David. And all the others. You made your choice. Brenda's face crumpled, but my children's expressions remained hard. They walked past her without another word. Outside the courthouse, I put my arms around both of them. You know what? I said, let's go celebrate. How about we drive out to the ranch and have a barbecue? Just the three of us. Felix grinned. Can we invite Grandpa and Grandma Mitchell? My parents have been incredibly supportive through the whole ordeal, never once asking me to forgive Brenda or give her another chance. Absolutely, I said. Family's what matters most. As we walked to the truck, I realized something important. Brenda hadn't just lost a husband and children. She'd lost her place in a family that would have stood by her through anything. Instead, she'd chosen temporary thrills over permanent love. Her loss, our gain. 1 year later, I was standing in my expanded dealership, watching Felix help a young farmer understand the financing options for his first tractor. My son had decided to join the family business instead of going straight to college, and he was proving to be a natural salesman. Dad, Haley called from the office. Mrs. Peterson is here about the combined parts. At 16, Haley had become my unofficial office manager, handling scheduling and customer service with the kind of efficiency that impressed everyone who met her. She was planning to study business administration in college, with the goal of eventually taking over the dealership's financial operations. The business had thrived since the divorce. Word had gotten around about how I'd handled Brenda's betrayal, with dignity, strength, and decisive action. Farmers respect that kind of character, and my customer base had grown significantly. More importantly, my relationship with my children had never been stronger. Without Brenda's drama and manipulation, our house had become a place of peace and honest communication. Felix walked over after finishing with his customer. Dad, that's the third sale this week. I think we're going to beat last year's numbers. I asked, smiling. Well, you and Haley are family, he said. I figure I should be part of the team. Haley joined us, carrying a folder of invoices. Speaking of team, I've been thinking about something. Next month is the county fair, and they're having their annual scholarship fundraiser dinner. What about it? I asked. I think we should sponsor a table, she said. Show the community that the Mitchell family supports education and local kids. I looked at my two children, my son who'd chosen loyalty over his mother's lies, my daughter who'd found strength in the face of betrayal, and felt overwhelming gratitude. You know what? I said, let's sponsor 2 tables, and let's make it an annual tradition. That evening, we sat on the back porch of our house, watching the sunset over the Texas countryside. The ranch property was officially ours now. The court had awarded it to me after Brenda's fraud conviction, and we turned it into a weekend retreat where the kids could ride horses and I could decompress from the business. "Dad," Felix said, "do you ever regret how everything went down with Mom?" I thought about it for a moment. "I regret that it happened," I said. "I regret that she made the choices she made. But I don't regret standing up for our family's honor. I don't regret teaching you both that actions have consequences." "Good," Haley said firmly. "Because we're proud of how you handled it. You showed us what real strength looks like." As the stars came out, I reflected on the past year. Brenda was serving her prison sentence and would be released to a world where she'd lost everything that mattered. Kyle Brennan was working at a gym in another state, his marriage and reputation destroyed. The other men who'd been part of her web of lies had all faced their own reckonings. Meanwhile, Felix, Haley, and I had built something stronger than what we'd lost. We'd built a family based on truth, respect, and unwavering loyalty to each other. "You know what I love about our family?" I said, looking at my children. "What's that, Dad?" they asked together. "We keep our promises to each other," I said. "And that's something no one can ever take away from us." The Mitchell family had survived the storm. We'd come out stronger, closer, and more committed to each other than ever before. And that was worth more than any cheating wife could ever destroy.